We can train people to be either moral or amoral. If we train people to harden their hearts and be hard, we're training a bunch of jackasses. It's like training a bunch of serial killers. We can teach people to be moral and also have tough love when we need to have tough love. And if it's a police officer we're training them to be one or the other. It's up to us to train them to do things with love and understanding and have tough love when they need to. If we train people to be abusers, then it's not all their fault. We do have our part. We're the ones doing the training. Same thing with the military. Too much of the basic training of our military is training people to want to fight a war, to want to start a war and fight a war. If we train people right and do things right, then we can do things because we know it's the right thing to do, not because we're all jacked up. Within the military, if we're training people to be hard-hearted, we're training a bunch of abusers.
I have long feared that my sins would return to visit me, and the cost is more than I can bear. The Patriot, Benjamin Martin, played by Mel Gibson.
This fear is shared by many soldiers who were trained to never question authority, trained to just take orders in pure ignorance. Plausible deniability is just a sophisticated sounding term of pure lying and cheating to perpetuate ignorance. But we aren't saved in ignorance. Our willingness to accept such blindness does not change the fact that we are each responsible for our own actions. It's time to demand more from our leaders. It's not all their fault. They've been handed a system of doing things in the dark or with top secret clearance. For all good things can be done in the open with full transparency. Yet, all forms of hate and fear-based actions take place in the dark. If they're going to hunt bad guys, they should make it clear as to who and why. Give the bad guys a chance to tell their side of the story, and it may shock you who the bad guys actually are. The United States military shouldn't be stationed in a country like Afghanistan for the main purpose of protecting their opium fields from being attacked. That's what so many of our good U.S. soldiers who have come home from Afghanistan have come home believing. Also, that if the United States military lines were not there, then no one would be running into them to fight them. The good citizens who've been ignorantly funding such wars are still responsible, even in their ignorance. Nature seeks balance. No one gets away without paying the price of their ticket. The price of our ticket is the price we all pay when we accept responsibility in our lives, and the price that comes when we're faced with the truth. Do we have too much cognitive dissonance to accept it? Anybody who's ever done any time in the military, or the refugees, or any people who have ever been abused by any military around the world, they all need to understand this. It wasn't the people. It was the parasitic elite. People who had way too much money and haven't understood the true purpose of wealth have been funding the wars. Even the George Soros 60 Minutes interview showed George basically saying the same thing, that we need to change the system. If we change the system, like if we change the laws, he'd be happy to comply. Few men have virtue to withstand the highest bidder. George Washington. Since abusers accumulate their wealth through malice, fraud, and counterfeits, perhaps the change in our system they seem to all have been searching for, their boundaries, should be to use the most abusive parasitic elites as examples of what happens to those who abuse the masses, by stripping the abusers of all their wealth. reducing them to a middle class or even lower class, since that's the status quo they've been maintaining. According to the Old Testament, Numbers chapter 5, verses 5 through 7, "And the Lord spoke unto Moses, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, when a man or woman shall commit any sin that men commit, to do a trespass against the Lord, and that person be guilty, then they shall confess their sin which they have done, and he shall recompense his trespass with the principal thereof, and add unto it the fifth part thereof, and give it unto him against whom he hath trespassed." So, according to the Old Testament, the punishment should include the principal plus 1/5 of the principal, which equals 120%, not just equal to the crime, but an additional 1/5 more than the crime. So they know that the punishment is truly worse than the crime, and worse than the rewards they hope to gain by committing the crime. God decreed the death penalty for murder as given to Noah in Genesis chapter 9, verse 6. "Whoso sheddeth man's blood, by man shall his blood be shed. For in the image of God made he man." With people as bad as Hitler, the price of their ticket is too high for them to pay, which is when people have historically been sentenced to death. And it's no wonder the ancient natives were so bold to erect their standard of peace, their title of liberty, as a covenant with God, and start weeding out the Gadianton robbers, which was the name of the secret invisible combination robber group which had reigned with blood and horror back then. Narcissistic personality disorder is a mental disorder in which people have an inflated sense of their own importance, a deep need of admiration, and lack of empathy for others. But behind this mask of ultra-confidence lies a fragile self-esteem that's vulnerable to the slightest criticism. So again, these people need help. They need all the love and understanding we can give them, and they need help. We have to be careful how we do this. Why are they vulnerable to the slightest criticism? Because it's all the fear programming. They have no solid foundation in truth, just a sandy foundation of fear programming. The further people go from the truth, the more they have to surround themselves with people who think the same way, or to convince themselves that it's okay. Showing an increase of love after having the tough love with someone, you show an increase of love so they don't think that you're their enemy. That's especially important to remember with narcissistic disorder. Although it's a good practice with everybody, especially important with a narcissist. What makes the amoral, social sociopaths and narcissists dangerous is that they actually have built their programming on a sandy foundation, so they're all unstable. My friend Sheila Z. Sterling authored a book called Love and Illusion and got a PhD while discovering the social sociopath disorder and coining the term social sociopath. These people are the life of the party, but they leave a bloody trail everywhere they go, which very well describes one major type of amoral personality, a way some men have been trained. And these men, like George Soros, they need all the love and understanding we can give them. But they're also very dangerous, so we must be wise and assertive with our tough love in helping them pay the price of their ticket. I recommend you read Sheila's book, as it offers new insights to our relationships. I know there will be many women who thank me for introducing them to this book. Men have their patriarchal issues, and women have their matriarchal issues.